Welcome to the Gold Newsletter Podcast, your bank of knowledge of investments, economics, and geopolitics. Go to goldnewsletter.com for our publications and archives to increase your wealth monetarily and educationally.
Hello, folks. This is Fergus Hodgson with the Gold Newsletter Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. It's my pleasure to be with you always. I have an old friend and a stellar guest from Chile, Axel Kaiser. And he is, as we were discussing earlier, he's been working for a long time in the domain of classical liberalism as a public intellectual and has achieved great influence across Latin America and beyond. He is the president of the Foundation for Progress. He holds a PhD in philosophy, which he earned in Germany, and he's been a prolific author. He's recently wrote a book on Pope Francis, or Papa Francisco in Spanish, and then also contributed a chapter to a book on the transition from illiberalism to populism in Latin America. We're going to explore today the economic developments in Chile, and there was a quote recently from the Minister of Economy in Chile that Chile is, quote, open for business. So I want Axel to unpack that, but first, just thanks for giving us your precious time, mate.
No, thanks for having me. My pleasure to be here.
Right on. And Axel, so much is going on in Chile, and a lot of foreigners pay attention to Chile because of its perceived, and I believe you would say somewhat distinct status within Latin America as more institutionally stable, as somewhat more open to foreign investment. So we pay attention to it. Of course, a lot went on during Bachelet's socialist coalition leadership, and then late last year, Sebastián Piñera came to office, and so he seems to be working hard to at least rebuild the image of Chile as open for investment. And as I mentioned, Minister of Economy has been pushing this line. Is that true? Is Chile a place relative to her neighbors open to foreign investment?
No, I think it is. I know many of the ministers that Piñera appointed now, and some of them are my friends. I'm absolutely convinced that they are doing everything in their power to make Chile an even more attractive place for foreign investors. And I know José Ramón Valente, who is the economics minister, very well. And he's a free market guy. He's someone who believes in private property and in entrepreneurship, foreign investment. So I mean, you can't find better allies if you are a foreign investor now to come to Chile. So it's the right time, it's the right government, and of course they are trying to fix Michelle Bachelet's socialistic reforms. One of them was the tax reform, which was very poorly designed and increased heavily the taxes on corporations, and that was a huge mistake. But they are trying to correct that somehow, and it's still, I would say, compared to other Latin American countries, an attractive place because political risk is fairly low. It's not like Argentina. They are trying to improve their things and too, but it's not as easy as it is in Chile. We have a track record for over 40 years or so with foreign investors and not being expropriated or expelled from the country or things like this. So, or just confiscated.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of an awkward competitor there. And people will know I did live for a year in Argentina and spent a bit of time in the southern part of Chile in the Patagonia region. And you can notice as you go from Argentina to Chile, the difference in development is clear. As many people know about Argentina, it does suffer from infrastructural challenges, particularly these paros nacionales, or national strikes, which shut down the country all the time. And one element from the Minister of Economy that struck my attention was the way that he said that Chile is not, he didn't want to get into the habit of pointing out particular industries that were attractive in Chile. He just said, we want to emphasize our institutional framework as more stable, rigorous, friendly than other countries. So whatever business you want to do, come here. Of course, Chile has been known for copper and other mining opportunities. Do you want to comment on those two relevant points, the fact that Chile is just maybe a stable place for any business, or that it has traditional industries that continue to grow or receive particular attention?
Yeah, I believe that Chile still is a stable place. It has deteriorated over the last decade or so because we have seen the rise of some populist movements and these old-fashioned socialistic ideas that never die in Latin America. And of course, some deterioration of the rule of law, particularly in the south. But it's still a very stable country, I would say. And the fact that Piñera was elected, and I can tell this because he was one of the leading intellectuals who opposed Michelle Bachelet and her socialist government, and also her successor, Alejandro Guillet. So the fact that Piñera was elected shows that the Chilean people doesn't want radical leftist policies, and this is a guarantee to some extent for investors. And we also are one of the most open countries in the world to foreign trade and foreign investments. We have signed so many trade agreements, not even Bachelet dared to touch that. So I think there are pretty firm rules that foreign investors can count on, like if you compare that to the rest of Latin America. Of course, this is not a developed country. We are not in Switzerland, and everything is possible in Latin America. But it's a long way to go until we get to a point where these people start confiscating private property or foreign investments. Some of them want to do that. Going to your second point, the mining business. So we have populist political parties sitting now in the parliament who would like to nationalize the mining industry, like we did it with Allende in the 70s. And if they have the chance to get to power, it could get complicated. But it's a minority. Still, it's a minority. And as far as copper is concerned, we are still one of the largest exporters in the world, maybe the largest one. And now we are discovering, of course, lithium. We have the largest reserves in the world, or one of them, probably with Argentina.
I saw quoted that this lithium triangle, Peru, Chile, Argentina, Peru or Bolivia, I'm sorry, the three countries there.
I think it's Bolivia. I think it's Bolivia. They also have lithium.
Yeah, apparently this triangle has 75% of the world's lithium reserves, so it's no joke. And the news which I shared with you before is just that some Chinese buyers wanted to get in and take a major stake in this, and the Chilean government rejected them. So this particular area is going to come under more attention in the future. And you said that it's controlled by just a couple of companies right now. These are not state-owned enterprises. These are just private companies that control those deposits.
Yeah, that's a difference with the copper business, where you have Codelco, which is a state-run company, and which, like most state-run companies, has many problems. They have tried to improve their standards and everything, but of course, has been subjected to lots of political favors, and so you use it as a cash machine for paying to different people. But it's the largest company probably now operating in or one of the largest ones in the world, I think, Codelco, as far as copper is concerned. But we have also private companies, many different private companies operating in the copper business here. But in the lithium business, you only had until recently Sokimich, which is a private company. It somehow had achieved to get the monopoly on lithium exploitation, and this was very annoying to Bachelet government because the main owner of this company is Pinochet's son-in-law. So there is something personal there, and then they managed to get a deal or strike a deal where they open up to a second player, and but that's about it. So there are not many, as far as I know, not many opportunities for direct investment in the lithium business because it's
tied up,
closed. Yeah, and controlled two actors basically.
Yeah. So this at least the Chilean side of it. And you were correct, yeah. It's Bolivia, so the Uyuni in Bolivia, Atacama in Chile, and Hombre Muerto in Argentina. And that at least 75% of the world's known reserves of lithium. And SQM is the one that's in control mainly on the Chilean side. There's so much news coming out of Chile onwards. Two of the issues which you didn't quite touch on, but which keep bumbling around. One, you mentioned earlier the taxation, or the almost punitive taxation on corporations, but two that caught my attention when I was looking up the news. One was this march against the so-called privatized pension schemes. I guess you could almost like say crony, or I'm not sure, mandated but then privately run pension schemes. And there was a 10,000 march against these pension schemes. And apparently Piñera is open to reforming them. What kind of reforms should we expect to see to the pension schemes in Chile? And will this have an impact on the fiscal status of the nation? Because I know that it's already gone through a downgrade in its bond rating.
Well, with Bachelet, we had, as a member of her coalition, we had the Communist Party and very radical left-wing actors, including her, because Bachelet is a communist in her heart. And suffices to read what she tweeted when Fidel Castro died, that he was a great hero for social justice and human rights in Latin America.
Oh, wow.
To understand what kind of person Bachelet is, and so celebrated by the international left and especially the American left, which is incredible. But I think that in the end, Bachelet did not succeed in attacking the AFPs, which are our private pension funds, because she understood also that this is a very sensitive point for the Chilean economy, or spot for the Chilean economy. It's we have almost 70% or more of GDP in savings in the AFPs, and so if you really touch that and you do what Cristina Kirchner or the Kirchner did in Argentina, expropriating the money, then you would completely ruin and destroy the Chilean economy. Our capital markets are completely dependent on the savings that we have accumulated in the AFPs, which, by the way, they have had a very good returns in the sense of investment by the contributors. So we pay 10% of our salary into the system. I'm paying into the system, for example, and the profitability for us has been 10% a year on average, 9% a year on average, adjusted by inflation. So on top of
incredible
inflation,
returns. Why are people
incredible?
Yeah, I'm reading here. This is the AFP, not the news sources. It's actually on Yahoo, but published by AFP or republished from them. And they are demanding improved conditions. They say there are not good enough returns, and they say they had been led to expect annual payments at 70% of their last salary. So people are complaining about these. I mean, if you're getting 9 to 10%, I mean, those are just a very high returns. So I don't know what the problem is.
So the problem is that people like to believe in magic. And so they believe, many people believe, and because leftist activists and demagogues have tried to convince them that a pension system is there to give you an extraordinary pension the day you retire. But that's not true. The pension system should give you the best pension that the system can provide you according to the contribution you made during your lifetime. And so we have an economy where productivity by most people is very low, and then you have the so-called lagoons, so periods of time where people did not contribute to this into the system. And on top of that, we are living 9 more years on average than when the system was designed. So all of that together implies brings to the result that you can't get a very high pension if you did not contribute into the system, even if the returns were amazing. So you have people making $500, not contributing for many years, expecting to go into retirement with at least 80% or 90% or 100% or even more from what they earned last time they were working. I mean, from their last salary. But if you take a look into the numbers, the replacement rate, which is the percentage you get of your last salaries or the average of your last salaries, last 5 years you were working, is for someone who has been consistent in contributing to the system over 70%, over 75% even. And that's only with 10% of contribution, which is amazing. In Spain, they pay 30% to a pay-as-you-go system, and they get that, or even a little less than what we get. So So you can see that it's a lot of...
I understand. I mean, basically, people want to have these ridiculous expectations and then cry about it when they don't get them. But the bit that caught my attention was that Chile's president, Sebastián Piñera, says he wants to change the Pinochet-era pension system, and he has pledged to outline a number of reforms that would involve bringing in insurance firms and creating a state version of the system. Is this going to happen?
I don't know, but it was such a pressure upon the system that I wouldn't be surprised if Piñera tries to take out the pressure by creating a state-run alternative to the private institutions that we already have. All experts agree that that would be a bad idea because they are not going to be cheaper and more competitive than the private institutions.
Do you want to rub elbows with the best minds in the precious metals and mining industry? You can on the Money, Metals, and Mining Cruise from May 28th to June 7th, 2018. Explore the jewels of the Mediterranean while discovering the latest strategies to successfully invest in precious metals and mining stocks. It's a perfect blend of adventure, learning, and luxurious leisure aboard the Crystal Serenity, always a popular destination. Cabins will sell out fast. Call cruise experts at 800-797-9519 to learn more, or visit our website goldnewsletter.com/cruise.
So we just got cut up there for a second. Axel was just rounding off how the pension scheme of Chile, which is not that radical really, and many other Latin American countries have taken on this idea of at least giving people the option to choose a different privately managed pension scheme, maybe going under some reforms. The reason why I mentioned this was just that there still is this populist leftist pressure in the country, even if not overwhelming. The pension scheme, the pressure to reform what is really a very successful pension scheme is one manifestation of that. And it reminds me of the fact that I think it was last year or maybe a year before that Chile received a downgrade from Fitch, and I'm trying to think of one of the other major ratings agencies. So why did Chile get a downgrade, and is that going to be turned around soon?
So it was because actually, like most socialist governments, spent more money than she was taking in. She doubled the debt in 4 years, the public debt. And the fiscal deficit was running at unsustainable levels. And so it's not a critical situation because Chile had a very, very good position in terms of debt to GDP ratio and all that. But the pace of indebtedness was not sustainable. So that's why we got downgraded. And she promised so many things to everyone, like social rights. We call them social rights, and which are nothing more than obligations for the future taxpayers that you have to pay by higher taxes, or even at some point when you have to service the debt, you have to increase taxation anyway. So that's what that was the reason. Piñera inherited a very tight situation in fiscal terms, and they're trying to bring the deficit down, but he's already obliged to comply with many of Bachelet's reforms that imply more spending. I think Piñera will manage to have a fiscal balanced situation because that's where he's the best and he's good at that. But in the long run, we are going to have the same trend that most countries have, which is the state, the size of the government will increase and increase, and the private sector will not see, at least the middle class will not see very substantial increases in their living standards, partly because of this. So our government has increased 50% over the last decade. We used to have 17% taxation on corporations, and now we are at 27%. This was only 8 years ago. And so it has been a dramatic increase in the tax rate for companies and corporations, which make us uncompetitive. Actually, we are over OECD average in terms of of corporate
That's
trade.
painful, and for it just flies in the face of Chile's reputation.
Right.
And one of the maybe policy changes that caught my attention was the way that now for-profit education is becoming much more difficult in Chile. Do you want to give a quick comment on what is going on with the education reform? Is that going to be reversed as well?
So they're trying to fix some of these problems, but in general, we have to concede that Bachelet was successful in dismantling part of the free market and free to choose model that we have had in Chile for a long time. And so when she came into office, it was her obsession and the obsession of the socialists that were working with her to put an end to our highly privatized educational system. We have something similar to the voucher system. It means that we have over 70% of children going to private schools that were most of them are subsidized by the government or by the taxpayer. And some of them were able to make profit out of it. And so Bachelet and her people tried to destroy this, so the state would control all education with the exception of 7% of children who go to fully private schools. I went to a fully private schools, and of course all their children of the socialists go to fully private schools that will not be affected by the reform. Everyone is equal, but some are more equal than others. So these people who have no skin in the game destroyed the private education system for the middle class for ideological reasons, basically, and so they can control education, which is also one of their goals, to control it politically. And
not only the funding, of course, but the funding is really a conduit to the content of the education.
It's terrible because we had a system where parents could pay a part of their children's education. If they didn't have enough money, they went to a private school, and so they had to pay. For instance, 50% would be paid by the taxpayer, 50% would be paid by their own pockets, which is good because it makes them responsible for the education of the children. It gives them a sense of dignity that they are taking care of their children. They get involved in the school because they're paying for the school and all that. And they put an end to that. So Bachelet ended that. So now she has banned parents in Chile to pay for their own children's education. They cannot do that. It's prohibited by the government, by the socialist government of Bachelet. This is one of the things I believe that they want to restore now with Piñera, because it's highly totalitarian in my opinion, and it has very counterproductive results. And actually the education minister is a member of my think tank, the foundation I started a couple of years ago. I know him very well. He's a good friend of mine. And he's a very free market pro-Friedman, free to choose type of person. And so he will do everything he can. I don't know if he will be successful, but he will do everything he can to restore some kind of freedom and ability to decide what is going to happen to your children, to Chilean parents, because nowadays the only people who can really say, I will pay for the education of my children are the very rich. Among them, Bachelet, who send her children to private schools, and all her advisors who then send their children and have their children in fully private schools. They can pay, but they didn't allow that for the rest of the Chileans. So that's the difference between socialists and people who believe in freedom. And I believe that this education minister, Varela, Gerardo, that's his name, he will try to restore, at least in part, that freedom to choose and to support your own children, send them to the school you have elected. So,
right. The one other issue which I became aware of by traveling through Patagonia, particularly Temuco, was this Mapuche long-standing standoff with the central government of Chile. And the reason why this caught my attention recently as well is that just yesterday, April 23rd, so 2 days ago, Amnesty International put out this release having a crack at the Chilean government. Now, Amnesty International has maybe a checkered or a varied history, but they noted the, quote, criminalization of one of the Mapuche leaders, and they're calling for her. Her name is Francisca Lincanao Amachi, and her relationship with a murder of a married couple who who maybe are German, I'm not sure, Luschinger and Mackay, they seem, they're European names, of course, who were murdered in 2013 for owning land in I guess they consider it a disputed area of Patagonia. Is this confrontation with the Mapuche going to go away, or is it flaring up? What is going on with this?
This was not even in Patagonia. This is the 9th region in the south, but Patagonia is much further south. I grew up in this region, and I know many people who actually knew the Luxinger Mackay. So we have a situation where we have terrorist groups, because this is nothing more than terrorism, and they are using the pretext of indigenous ancestral claims on lands they really never owned. We are really honest and take a look back into history, and many historians have pointed that out here. And most Mapuches, and this is the paradox, are not into the killing married old couples like they did with the Luxinger Mackay couple. These were older people who were in their home sleeping, and then 5 or 6 people came, and they entered the house. He managed to fire one shot, and then they burned them alive within the house. So this is what happened in Chile, and the government did nothing about this. And this Machi has been involved with this. These terrorist groups in Chile have connections to the FARC. We have official documents from the Colombian government showing the connection via the Communist Party in Chile, which has also been always supportive of terrorism and extremism in Chile. And no one is willing to enforce the rule of law. And here's the interesting thing. People believe that Mapuches, which are the indigenous people in southern Chile, are somehow left-wing and playing into this identity politics nonsense that you see everywhere in the developed world. They are not. Actually, most of them live in the 9th region. It's the only region where people won the referendum in 1988. And it's the region in the country where the right political parties and the right-wing candidates have the best results. So Piñera won largely in these counties where you have these Mapuches living. And so they vote for the right. They are not left-wing activists trying to reclaim massively their territories and things. This is nonsense. So there is a minority there that have been financed by foreign institutions, NGOs, and other organizations that have made a profit out of this thing. We have a terrible policy in this country of giving land to communities, Mapuche communities, who have become violent. So we pay them for becoming violent. But even so, most of them are peaceful people. And the worst part of this is the 9th region is one of the poorest regions in the country. And with all this violence against not only people but their farms, they are destroying machinery. They have burned thousands of trucks of people who engage in the business, small business people, and so they are destroying the income sources of many middle class people who live in these regions. They are even attacking them physically. Other Mapuches.
Yeah, we have to wrap it. Yeah, we have to wrap it up. But I understand the problem. This is a common theme. So the theme. Your concern is that right now everything is upside down, and that these people are being rewarded rather than cracked down on, and that is a grave or long-term threat to the rule of law in Chile. There
is no rule of law in the 9th region in Chile. You can ask anyone, and the people who have been the main victims of this have been the Mapuches themselves, especially the non-violent ones. And this is happening day by day. So it's very unfortunate that Amnesty International, that usually is on the wrong side of things, but not always, doesn't see that poor people, Mapuches, are suffering because of this, and because of a minority of organized terrorists that get support from outside, from Colombia, and even from ETA. We have had people there are making a bad name for all of them. So this is and Amnesty is contributing to that by not making the difference.
Excellent, Axel. Well, I hope people got a clear picture, both positives and negatives in Chile. Plenty to digest, mate. I look forward to next time. Keep up the great work.
Thank you for